Recording has begun. Good evening. This is the October 22, 2024 regular meeting of the Compliance and Amendments Committee of the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force of the City and County of San Francisco. The time is 4:36 p.m. The Sunshine Ordinance Task Force and its committees convene in hybrid meetings that allow for either in-person attendance or remote participation. Public comment will be taken on each item of the agenda. Meeting decorum. Any member of the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force may call for decorum due to the disorderly conduct of meeting participants. Persons who engage in threatening and/or menacing behavior may be asked to leave. Chair LaHood, that completes my announcements.
Thank you. Please call the first item.
Item 1, call to order, roll call, and agenda changes.
The meeting is called to order. Please call roll.
Taking the roll call. Chair LaHood.
Present.
Chair LaHood present. Member Anderson.
Present.
Member Anderson present. Member Pilpel.
Not well, but present.
Member Pilpel present. Member Wolf.
Present.
Member Wolf present. 4 people present. 4 individuals present. We have a quorum.
And I am not aware of any agenda changes unless, Ms. Peterson, if you've heard from anyone, but I think you said that everyone who you were expecting to attend is here. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Member Pilpel?
Yes, on agenda changes, I have not had a chance to look at the minutes. Could we move that to the end or later in the meeting? So I have a few minutes.
That's fine. That would be fine. So we're requesting to have the, why don't we move agenda changes, approval of the minutes to after item number 4. So we'll do public comment, then hear file number 24021, then do approval of the minutes before we head into reviewing the Sunshine Ordinance.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I just want to note that the August 27 minutes have not been posted on the website.
Thank you. I will get that taken care of post haste.
Thank you, Member Wolf. Should we, do I need to make a motion for agenda changes, or is that just to the call of the chair?
I think you can do that.
I think we can just do that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as there's no objection.
Does anyone have any objection?
No.
Okay. Hearing none, we're just going to move approval of the minutes until after item number 4. So, Ms. Peterson, please call the next item.
Could just see if there's any public comment on it.
Item number 3, public comment. Members of the public may address the committee on matters that are within the committee's jurisdiction, but not on today's agenda. Anyone wishing to make public comment on item 3, please approach the podium. Members of the online community, please raise your hand in the F. I'll press star 3. I'll give you a moment. We have no one in the queue for public comment.
Thank you. Please call the next item.
Item number 4, file number 24021. Complaint filed by Matthew Lataki against the police department for allegedly violating Administrative Code Sunshine Ordinance, Section 67.21, by failing to respond to a records request in a timely and/or complete manner. On October 2nd, 2024, the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force found that the police department violated Administrative Code Sunshine Ordinance, Section 67.21, by failing to provide the requested records. The Sunshine Ordinance Task Force orders the Police Department to provide the requested records and to send the file to the Compliance and Amendments Committee for follow-up.
Thank you. Ms. Peterson, you said that we have both the petitioner and the respondent here. Is that correct?
That is correct. Mr. Lataki is approaching the podium. Lieutenant Beauchamp has been added as a panelist.
Okay. Mr. Lataki, welcome back. If you could, since we just recently heard this case, I don't think we need to go over the points again. Unless members, does anyone need a refresher on this case, or can we just proceed with finding out if there's been any updates since our last full task force hearing?
I believe we can proceed.
Okay. So, Mr. Lataki, have you received any of the requested records that were identified, that you requested and that our order of determination ordered to be handed over?
I have not, Member Hood. Instead, I received an email saying that the SFPD is, quote, currently in the process of responding to this decision and anticipate a response to this decision by October 31st, 2024.
Okay, thank you. Lieutenant Beauchamp, are you on the line?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Could you give us a few more details? I believe we asked for those records to be turned over to the task force and to Mr. Lataki. Can you tell us where we are with this?
Oh, yes, ma'am. I forwarded the findings of the task force to the Director of Crime Strategies for the San Francisco Police Department, Director Ryan Cow. He oversees the location and programs that oversee the public safety cameras. He had some questions regarding the findings. I answered them to the best of my abilities. Director Cow stated he was going to speak with the command staff about a potential release and said that he would get back to me by the end of the month.
Okay. I believe the ordinance calls for response within 5 days, but can you tell me a little more about, is he trying to determine all of these locations in order to give a complete response, or is there still some question about what is being released?
Director Cow has not made me privy to his discussions with the command staff.
Okay, members, what questions do you have? Member Pilpel.
Just two to begin with. Can you just state again, the lieutenant in question is what?
Oh, Lieutenant Beauchamp.
No.
Oh.
Lieutenant Beauchamp. Nice.
Who's
Who's the guy?
Sure. It is Civilian Director Ryan Cow, K-A-O. He is the Director of Crime Strategies for the San Francisco Police Department.
Director of Crime. Okay. Well, that's encouraging because it sounds like we might actually have a crime strategy, but learn something. To Mr. Lataki, the email communication that you referred to, is that in our packet?
Yes, it is page 36.
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed that here.
It's the last item that was added.
Got it. Okay.
It's printed in your packet.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Not a big deal, but once again, in the future, if we could minimize the amount of stuff to just the post-decision stuff, but we can deal with that another way. Those are my two initial questions. I've got a couple other things ruminating. Why don't I ask them?
Member Anderson, Member Wolf, do you have any questions about this or thoughts?
Nope, you're covering my concerns so far.
Lieutenant Beauchamp, does, I don't know, this could be a silly question, but I'd still like an answer. Does Mr. Cow, he's a civilian, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Does he understand what the Sunshine Ordinance is and what we do when we issue an order?
Yes, I explained in detail the findings of the task force and the order that was made by the task force regarding the release of these records.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Member Pilpel?
Yes, despite all the pieces of paper here. Couple other follow-ups. First to Mr. Lataki, I think I saw something on the news last night or today about a potential lawsuit involving, I forget the name of the company. It was a 5-letter company that started with F.
So if you're referring to the San Francisco Chronicle article, they actually didn't get it right. The Institute for Justice has initiated a lawsuit against, I want to say, Norfolk in Virginia. It's not, the article did mention that it was against Block, but the actual lawsuit, which I read, was against the city of Norfolk for their ALPR cameras.
Okay. I don't think I saw it in the Chronicle. It was on TV. Since no TV reporters do anything, they rely on the printed press, and we appreciate the few journalists that still exist to actually chase things down. Anyway, they had some interesting statement that was quoted about how this company's view was that there was no reasonable expectation of privacy for simply gathering license plate numbers from a vehicle in the public right-of-way, something to that effect. And I thought that was an interesting argument. That's clearly not what's at issue right here, right now. You were looking for merely camera locations. But I just continue to think that this area of license plate readers and other forms of technology and the data gathering around it is important and sort of intersects with both public records and privacy concerns. And I'm not questioning anything that we've done. I just wanted to state that. Let me turn to Lieutenant Beauchamp for a moment. I believe in the past when the task force has issued an order asking the police department, and for that matter, other departments, to provide records within 5 business days. It hasn't 100% been adhered to, but by and large, it has been. And I am struggling to think of a recent instance where we made such an order and the police department did not comply. Maybe you can shed some light on that. But I'm just thinking both about the end of the month deadline that you talked about, and just in general going forward, how we might address not immediate compliance by a department with an order issued by this task force.
Which portion would you like me to address, sir?
Anywhere you choose to weigh in.
Okay. To open the door a bit, so I oversee the legal division of the San Francisco Police Department. We are essentially the clearinghouse for Public Records Act requests and for the Sunshine Ordinance task force. We are not actually the repository ourselves of a lot of the information that's typically requested. So in this case, the requested information, the location of the public safety cameras, is under the purview of Director Ryan Cow. While he is a civilian, the director role in the San Francisco Police Department is effectively a commander level position, which is about 2 steps above me in the chain of command. So I can make requests. I can definitely provide contextual information and provide a lot of detail as to why certain decisions need to be made, but my recommendation can be overruled.
Okay. So further to that point, what I'm sort of hearing you saying is you don't actually have the requested record, that Director Cow does or has access to that information, but I think I'm hearing you saying, I don't have a map, I don't have a list. Am I?
Yes, I have none of the requested information to provide.
Okay. Well, that'll be an issue for us to deal with. Is there, back to Mr. Lotaki, you're still looking for the list and or map, correct?
Yes.
Okay. No more, no less. It's not like the universe has expanded or contracted. A map with dots that are connected somehow, or a list of locations with either addresses or street corners,
Preferably
So-
both.
something that's as identifiable as possible. And you've actually provided the list that we saw when we heard the complaint. So the police department could actually respond and say, yes, 90% of your locations are correct, and we have these additional locations that we can disclose at this time.
I would say that I would just ask for the records independent of the map. The map I produced was just to show that these are in plain view and publicly accessible.
Understood. But the point is that you already compiled a list of some of the locations.
Some, not all.
Okay, fair enough.
Mr. Latake, what are your feelings about hearing back from the police department on October 31st?
At this point, I would respectfully ask that the board or the committee or the full board, depending on how it works, refer to the ethics committee a willful failure from Director Ryan Cow. The ordinance is clear. 5 days is 5 days. And any response is to be the records.
Lieutenant Beauchamp, when you said you expect a response by the 31st, are you expecting to receive the list, or are you expecting something else?
I am unaware of what response I will get. The last I heard from Director Cow is that he was going to speak with the assistant chief regarding the release. I know that a lot of our command staff is tied up or busy with the International Association of Chiefs of Police that's going on in Boston this week.
Okay, here's what I'm thinking. Since you, Lieutenant Beauchamp, were told that you would receive a response by the 31st, and even with other things going on, and given that it's already been almost more than 2 weeks since our meeting with the full task force, I am hoping that you receive and are able to hand off to Mr. Latake that list of locations by the 31st. If that doesn't happen, I do think we should refer this back to the full task force. And Ms. Peterson, I don't know if has Chair Yankee already set the agenda for the November 6th meeting?
It has been drafted, not finalized.
Okay. What I'm thinking is that we would like to hear back from the police department by the 31st. If we don't, I would like to recommend to Chair Yankee that this go back to the full task force, because this seems like a pretty straightforward thing. This is not, we know that the police department knows these locations, and at this point, it will be a matter of, is the police department releasing this list of locations or not releasing the list of locations? And I do understand, Lieutenant Beauchamp, that those are not in your possession, but the person who has them, it has been requested, and as you've said, understands what the Sunshine Ordinance requires. And unless there is some other sort of response that is being delivered, we expect to have that list of locations by the 31st. And if we don't, I would motion to this committee that if that information is not delivered to Mr. Latake and our committee by the 31st, that we recommend to Chair Yankee to add this add this to the agenda for the November Sunshine Ordinance Full Task Force hearing. And Ms. Peterson, I see some questioning in your eyes.
Can I have clarification on how to structure the,
the motion. You'd like a clearer motion.
Specifically the recommendation that it go back to the task force.
Okay. My motion is that if the police department does not deliver the requested records to Mr. Latake and the task force by October 31st, we will recommend that this matter be returned to the full task force for consideration of willful violation
And
Of-
possible referral.
of an order of determination. I don't think we need to say that
All
because
right.
that's obvious.
For consideration of,
Willful violation of our order of determination. Of the order of determination that was issued on October 2nd, 2024.
is there a second?
I will so second.
Moved by Chair LaHood, seconded by Member Pilpel.
On the motion,
Mhm.
I think that's fine. I cast it a little differently, but it does the same thing. I think we should if this passes, we should communicate this to Mr. Lataki, to Lieutenant Beauchamp, but also to Chief Scott, Deputy Chief Lazar, Director Cow. Can't think of anyone else, but just so that they have full notice, and when we notice the meeting for the 6th, that they also be included in the notice, so that there's no question that they've been notified in the event that we take action. In the event that they don't disclose and that we choose to take action on the 6th, they should not complain that they were not notified. I want to be really clear about that.
Is that an amendment?
It's not an amendment to the motion, but it's
I think that's
suggested direction.
internal directives. I don't think it affects the motion.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Member Wolf.
Yeah, I also think we should refer to section 6731, titled Responsibility for Administration on this.
Could you say more?
Well, it requires the mayor to administer and coordinate implementation of the Sunshine Ordinance for departments under their control. That's the exact verbiage of the well, it says his or her control, but that's the exact verbiage of the first line. And it goes on to cite the mayor as being a responsible party for the implementation of the Sunshine Ordinance. The police department is a department under the executive branch, under her control.
That's interesting. I would like to recommend that we not go that far at this point, because I think we're still in the realm of it's the responsibility of the police department to respond. And Mr. Lataki might get exactly what he's looking for by the 31st, which is a little bit late, but understanding that there's a bit of handoff from person to person. At this, I don't know, members. Go ahead, Member Wolf.
I understand. I'm just noting that the ordinance has that provision.
Mm-hmm.
Whether I don't know. I'm not suggesting any action on it or against it or for it. But it may just serve as a reminder in these kinds of situations. I'm a little disturbed that when departments create either a public information office or in this case, the legal department managing a public information disclosure, there is requirements, as we know under the ordinance, that representation is now then becomes responsible for bringing the information forward and knowing what's happening. Otherwise, the actual respondent themselves, the person with the information, is the responsible party. We have the enhancement of the ordinance being focused on individual people that have access or possession of the records versus whether it's the agency or the department at the state level. And the sunshine ordinance at the local level takes precedent at that point. So that's what we hold to be true, and the way we've been operating. But I think, when there is such a disconnect where now the PIO cannot do their job because other people have supervisory or decision-making authority over their duly requirement under the ordinance, then I think, letting people know that there's law about who is responsible for the implementation, and those people should know. Kind of a long-winded answer. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Thank you, Member Wolf. I hear what you're saying, and I agree that this is relevant, but I would look at it as a next step. Otherwise, frankly, 6731 applies to every, violation that comes to us, because at the end of the day, it's just one of those, it seems to me that if we invoke that every time, it loses salience. And I think it should be reserved for either very clear and direct violations where the mayor is clearly directly involved, or when we get to a point where we're escalating matters. Would you agree?
No.
So you would invoke it every single time?
Well, it's not a matter of just invoking it. To me, it's just more of just general operational, that the mayor should and however that office operates should assure that there is correct implementation. And if for some reason that's not happening, that's when they should be notified.
But Member Wolf, if there were correct implementation at all times, we wouldn't be meeting at all. So there's often incorrect implementation. And do you think it's necessary to invoke 6731 for every violation?
Well, the invocation would be just I would say to notify, whether it's the mayor or other elected officers, when there is a violation. I think it's prudent to do that. Just a notice to say, the task force found a violation, and we want to let you know that a department under your command has caused or has invoked this violation or noncompliance, so that they know. Otherwise, they won't know unless we tell them.
Member Anderson?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying too, Member Wolf, but I think this is a conversation we should have with the full task force and not just with compliance and amendments. I would say at this point, the motion that's on the table, which says that we will refer this matter to the full task force if there's no response by October 31, is sufficient for today. And then if there is no compliance by October 31 or by our next Sunshine Ordinance Task Force meeting, then we can get into exactly who we're going to tell and how we're going to tell them. So I would call the question.
Okay. Member Pilpel seemed to want to say something. I'm going to let him say that, and then let's proceed. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. I agree that we should not invoke 67.31 at this time. I think this is a department matter. I already expressed my view about notice, so that we're good with that in the future. I don't know how we communicated our action after the October meeting because we haven't yet adopted the order of determination. When we take an action, if we're communicating that by email or memo, carrier pigeon, whatever we're doing to the department, I think we should include in that communication what the action is. If you have any questions about this action, please let us know, or please check with your deputy city attorney, so that the department is very clearly on notice that what action we've taken is that action, and they shouldn't come back later and say, well, we were busy in a conference, or I passed it to somebody else and they didn't quite get it. It's really on them to know what to do with it. And if they've got a question, they can, again, check with us, check with their city attorney. They have their own ways to deal with it, but I'm not displeased with Lieutenant Beauchamp. I think he's a very good messenger, but I am displeased with their untimely response as a department.
I'm going to take that and sort of add it to what Member Anderson said. That seems more of a meta discussion about how we're putting information out there and being clear about exactly what and when we expect in terms of responses. So we have a motion, we have a second. What did you say you called it? Called the question. So Ms. Peterson, I'd like to open this up for public comment.
Members of the public wishing to make public comment on this item, please approach the podium. We have no one in the online community and no one approaching the podium.
Okay, please call the vote.
Taking the vote on item 4. Chair LaHood.
Aye.
Chair LaHood, aye. Member Pilpel.
Aye.
Member Pilpel, aye. Member Anderson.
Aye.
Member Anderson, aye. 3 ayes, motion passes.
Oh, what about Member Wolf?
Member Wolf.
Aye.
Hello, Member Wolf.
Aye.
Member Wolf, aye. 4 ayes, motion passes.
Okay, thank you. So Ms. Peterson, Lieutenant Beauchamp, do you understand the nature of this motion we've just passed?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And Ms. Peterson, if you could, in writing, notify Lieutenant Beauchamp, and I would add the others who Member Pilpel suggested, or perhaps within consultation with Chair Yankee. And I will, if you could give him a heads up on my recommendation, but I will message him about that as well. That if we don't hear back by the 31st, I would recommend that we put this in front of the full task force for our November hearing. And Mr. Lataki, does that all make sense?
That does.
Okay.
And if we can copy Mr. Lataki on that communication.
Yes, Ms. Peterson, if you could copy Mr. Lataki on that communication as well, I think that would be helpful, probably more efficient.
Okay, so this will be notifying Lieutenant Beauchamp, the individuals mentioned earlier by Member Pilpel, with consultation with Chair Yankee, and you will be messaging Chair Yankee as well.
Yes.
I'm also adding to the CC Mr. Lataki.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lataki, for being here today. Thank you, Lieutenant Beauchamp. And let's proceed on to the next item.
Thank you. Item 2, approval of the August 27, 2024 Compliance and Amendments Committee meeting minutes.
So I looked at these and I thought they looked good. Members, do we have any other comments on the minutes from the August 27 meeting?
Member Wolf.
Member Wolf, please go ahead.
So I'm reading in here number 6, which is the review of the ordinance. And there's, it says, Member Pilpel provided a draft analysis comparison of the Ralph M. Brown Act, the California Public Records Act, and the Sunshine Ordinance for inclusion in the file. Where is that located? I don't have a copy of that.
Ms. Peterson, was that attached to was that attached to the agenda for this week, for today's meeting?
It was not.
Okay. Member Wolf, good catch. Ms. Peterson, if we could attach that to the file that we've been accumulating and add that as another item on the index. And I'm sorry that I didn't catch that before.
Let me just ask, Member Pilpel was through the chair.
Yes.
Was that retrieved from Thomson Reuters Westlaw Edge?
No, this was actually something that I developed on my own. And I think prior to the next time we have this discussion, I think we can ask Ms. Peterson to circulate it to you, among others.
Okay, great. Because what's attached to the minutes today.
Yeah, no, that's the other
Okay.
chart.
Okay, got it.
Yes, that's the Thomson Reuters chart.
And will there be an updated draft coming?
There will be at some point. I don't have an update today.
So what we're referring to now, I believe, Ms. Peterson, is the one that Mr. Pilpel, I think, Mr. Pilpel, you handed over a hard copy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Member Wolf, just so you know, it's a landscape document. The last version I printed out was 21 pages. It's got different columns of things. You will probably find it entertaining.
And as long as we're here on this point, Ms. Peterson, do you have that, or do you need another copy from Mr. Pilpel?
I do not need another copy.
Okay, thank you. Any other notes or questions regarding the minutes?
Yes.
Member Pilpel.
I agree the minutes are good. I just try to make them great or better. Our past practice has been to put the items, not necessarily the item numbers, but the items themselves in bold. So I had that. My other non-substantive edits were to add under item 1, after a quorum is present, staff member Pat Peterson was present. In the votes, our previous practice has been to include the member who moved and member who seconded as the first two votes, and then any other members present. So I reordered the voting order to reflect that past practice. There was a reference on page 2, item 4. Oh, I added against after Rosa L in the header for item 4. And the discussion under item 4 and elsewhere in item 5, I referred to petitioner rather than complainant. I think we've been pretty consistent in referring to petitioners and respondents rather than complainants. Spelled out police department in item 5, changed call log retrieval service to call log retrieval system in item 5. And that's about it. Anyway, I will hand these over, and I'm happy to make a motion.
Those all seem fine to me. Member Wolf, Member Anderson, do you feel as though those are minor and acceptable changes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes with the suggested edits offered by Member Pilpel. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any other comments from the committee? Okay, let's open this up for public comment.
So I have moved by Chair LaHood, seconded by Member Anderson, to approve the August 27, 2024 minutes as amended.
Correct. And Member Pilpel is handing Ms. Peterson his minor edits.
We have no one in public comment.
Yes, please.
We have no one in the room and no one online.
Okay, please call the vote.
Taking the vote on item 2, Chair LaHood.
Aye.
Chair LaHood, aye. Member Anderson.
Aye.
Member Anderson, aye. Member Pilpel.
Aye.
Member Pilpel, aye. Member Wolf.
Aye.
Member Wolf, aye. 4 ayes, motion passes.
Thank you. Please call the next item.
Sure.
Oh, one moment. Would you like a brief break?
Break.
Let's take a 10-minute break and then we'll come back.
Taking a recess at 5:15. Mics are off. Microphones are on. The time is 5:22 PM. Chair LaHood, Member Anderson, Member Pilpel, Member Wolf, noted present.
Okay. Okay, Ms. Peterson, if you could please call the next item.
Right. Did we need to clarify anything further?
I am going to be sending an email to Chair Yankee regarding the item we just discussed, and this does not require further discussion here. That's not something to be decided here. I think Chair Yankee can make a decision on that and decide how to proceed.
I'm sorry, what topic?
Oh, there was a question Member Pilpel asked me during the break if we needed to put the Lataki item on the agenda and then pull it, or wait until the 31st. And what I'm going to do is put that in Chair Yankee's hands, and we do not need to have further discussion on that.
Copy that.
Okay.
I really don't think we need to have further discussion on that, because I don't think it needs to be up to us.
No, I understand. I was just.
What is your question?
I was just going to ask if Ms. Peterson can read back the motion, because I just want to understand in my head if it was an opt-in or opt-out the way it was voted on.
I don't think it matters, because if they don't do what they're supposed to do, we essentially said it's going to be on the agenda. So if Chair Yankee decides to put it on the agenda and then pulls it because they've responded, it's essentially the same thing. I don't think it really matters.
Item 5.
Yes, item 5, please.
All right.
Item 5.
And just one last thing, I don't want us to go back to discussing this motion because the parties aren't here anymore. So I would feel more comfortable if we just go with the motion that was approved, hand it off to Chair Yankee. If we did something that doesn't work, he will handle it then. We can't actually do anything. I don't think it would be appropriate for us to do something different now.
I'm not suggesting doing anything differently. I just wanted to understand the operation of the motion. My sense was that we refer it back to the task force unless the police delivers the requested records.
I think that's what we said.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wasn't clear on
Yeah.
how it was worded. That's all.
Yeah.
If it works, then it works, and I'm good. All right. That's fine.
Thank you, Member Pilpel. I understand your question, and I believe that is exactly what we did. If it would make you feel more comfortable, Ms. Peterson, if you could just read back the last motion, and that way there won't be any question about what we approved, I think that would be helpful.
Moved. So reading the action on item
Yes,
4.
yes.
Moved by Chair LaHood, seconded by Member Pilpel. If the police department does not deliver the requested records to Mr. Lataki and the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force by October 31, 2024, the committee will recommend that this matter be returned to the full task force for consideration of Administrative Code Sunshine Ordinance, Section 67.21, 67.31, for willful violation of our order of determination that was issued October 2, 2024.
Okay, I think it still works because it leaves it in the hands of Chair Yankee to decide what to do if they don't comply.
We'll check the code section, but yes, that works for me.
Okay. Thank you. Please, if you could call the next item, please.
Item number 5, hearing. Review of the Administrative Code Sunshine Ordinance, Section 67, and possible amendments to recommend to the full task force.
Okay. I believe we are at 6721.1, policy regarding use and purchase of computer systems. Does everyone have their copy of the ordinance out? And since this is a short one, let's maybe give everyone 2 minutes to read 6721-1, and then we'll jump into discussion. Does that sound good? Okay. Okay, has everyone had a chance to read this?
Yes.
Okay. Any comments on this? Any comments or thoughts about updating the language?
Yes.
Member Pilpel, go ahead.
Okay. So I think my view to begin with in this area is as follows. I think in my view, 67.21L, that's just prior to this section on inspection and copying of documentary public information stored in electronic form, et cetera. I would actually move that into this section as a new subsection A, because I think that's about information in electronic form. And then I would make the existing language a new sub B. And I had some, I would describe as pretty non-substantive rewording of B. I'm happy to read that or discuss it. It's similar, but it's sort of fewer words. I think among the questions in this area, I think, is this language necessary and useful? I think it is. Is the concept here about establishing city policy in this area useful? I think it is. This could be updated because this was talking about technology, 25 years ago. The next paragraph, the existing B, talks about departments purchasing new computer systems. That too, I think, is useful, but perhaps could be updated. I think this entire language should be discussed with departments, with the Department of Technology, with the Committee on Information Technology, perhaps with the Office of Contract Administration. I mean, this is sort of setting some pretty broad but important policies about computer systems and technology, and I think are not insignificant in the grand scheme of things. So if this is sort of a generational look at this language, I think we should get it right, and both reflect current practices and look forward to further evolution in technology and have provisions for how that may change in the future. I mean, if we're laying out basic principles that make sense, then I think that should carry forward regardless of the technology. For example, as I read it, the ordinance says nothing about social media or text messages or, I don't know, TikTok, whatever. Other things that I don't use or necessarily understand. But I think it is likely in the next few years to generation that there will be other forms of technology, including artificial intelligence and all kinds of other things. I mean, I didn't see driverless cars 25 years ago. I'm not sure any of us did. So, I mean, this really is, I think, an important policy section about how the city addresses changes in technology going forward. That's my initial bit. I'm happy to read the language if you'd like.
Well, two things. I would like to know whether the other members agree with moving L from the previous section down to the top of this system. I would like your line edits because, like, we're going to need to consider them at some point, and so I think putting them here would be good. And then I want to hear from the other members about the either specific edits to this and or the recommendation that, without going through the whole list, that we consult the Department of Technology on specific language that would be relevant and incorporate new kinds of technologies that have come into use since this was written. So I'll break that down. Member Anderson and Member Wolf, how do you feel about moving L from the previous section to the top of this section? For or against?
So I'm a little split on this one, and I'll tell you why.
Mm-hmm.
If the thrust of L is an activity that is consistent with the previous section, the section it already is in, the function of how to implement L is with the use of the technology as described in it. So I'm a little reluctant to separate the function from the, I don't know, materials or tools that are used to carry out the function. The function to me is primary. So so that's where the rub is, because the 6721-1 kind of describes what that technology is supposed to be, and in its physical form, and doesn't necessarily discuss the necessarily the requirements. It just reiterates that its use is for such things. But in 6721-1, the thrust of that is just on the tool itself. So the question is then is, will it confuse a reader, no matter who the reader is? Will it confuse the reader? Will it cause additional need to interpret the code more than it already is difficult to interpret certain passages? Or should L, kind of be the parts of L that talk about the tool be kind of parsed down? Because I read L to be more of like the implementation of the tool, but not necessarily describing the tool and what it what features or functions it needs to have. That's what 6721-1 is kind of describing. So I'll stop there for a moment. I think I need to formulate a little bit more in my mind around this one. Each one is so meaty, and has necessary information in it. I'd like to take a moment. I'll stop there.
Member Anderson?
Listening to the discussion, the previous discussions, it's my considered opinion that L should remain where it is, because basically it's saying that, it's just saying that for any documents that are stored in electronic form, they should be made available. In 6721. In 6721.1, it's saying get the equipment that allows the documents to be stored in electronic form. And I could see if we wanted to maybe modify 6721.1 to say technological and computer systems.
Mhm.
And that would cover anything that happens to come out later. So it expands it from just computer systems to the point where they put a chip in our head. But it would at least, it would say it's covered. It's a technological system in order to house records and to make those records readily available for the public. So at this point, I don't think I would agree, Member Pilpel, with moving L, but I do believe we need to expand computer systems to technological systems, and then that takes care of everything that comes down the line. Because again, it may not be computer, say, it may be just new technological systems that come in, and that would cover TikTok and Instagram and all those other things that chat, GPT, technological system.
How would you feel about if we change the heading of use and purchase of computer systems and other technology used to create or store records?
That would be agreeable to me.
It's long.
It's long. I was going to say other technology, and I thought, well, there's lots of technology that has nothing to do with records.
Right.
But the title is not the law. It's what's in the paragraphs underneath it.
Mhm.
Oops, I lost everybody. There we go.
No, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here's a thought. Without deciding whether to move or leave L in place, and it's funny because I look at it now and there are no edits in it, so we might have not actually edited that one. Did any of you have any internal edits for that section, whether it stays there or moves below?
I think I do. Let me compare the two.
Let me just add something in general about this. The way this is written, like actual just construction, is not unlike other areas of the ordinance where it tries to jam pack everything into one paragraph. And each sentence is an individual concept than the next. It's not like one sentence has nothing to do with the next sentence. And so I have been concerned about that because other sections that are far more important and substantive, I think need to be read that way, that there should be some, additional sub paragraphs to basically separate them out or to create new upper level sub paragraphs. For instance, in L currently, the first sentence talks about inspecting and copying, but then the second sentence talks about inspection of the public information on a computer monitor, which has really nothing to do with the previous sentence. It's inclusive of 6721 regarding the disclosure of information, but it contained in the same paragraph. It doesn't there's no sequence to it. It just appears. And then in the third sentence, it states nothing in this section shall require a department to program or reprogram a computer. So what does that have to do with the previous sentence? Nothing.
Well,
They're all three independent of each other. And I have concerns about that kind of of writing construction in the ordinance.
I have some thoughts, but Member Pilpel, go ahead.
Okay. I would have to go back and look at Prop G from 1999, the previous version prior to that, to track the legislative history here. I would note, and maybe Chair LaHood for your notes, the current CPRA section that's the parallel here is 7922.570 at SEEK. I think the intention at the time, and I will have to go back into the deep recesses of the brain and remember this, was to, in 67.21L, was to parallel the language in CPRA. There was concern at the time, however it was expressed in law or in practice, that there were requests for information that was only available on a computer monitor, that could not be printed out because there wasn't a report that was generated, and how would access be allowed if there was information that was intertwined. And so the resolution of that question was the second sentence, that inspection need not be allowed where the information was intertwined. But at the same time, nothing should require a department to program or reprogram. But the task force has held in several occasions that if the only way to get at the information and generate a report is to write a query, that's not considered requiring a department to program or reprogram, because that's the only way to get at the information. So there are a lot of, sort of conceptual legal framework bits that go into this that translate into, sort of practical stuff, right? I mean, we just heard a case about they know where the stuff is, but they don't want to share, So there's a lot of stuff is out there. We're now at a point, and nothing that I read in the ordinance addresses software as a service, cloud computing. There's information. There are arguably records that the city has access to, that the city may or may not own, that are stored in systems that the city has access to, whether it's by license agreement, by some other agreement that I don't know if Microsoft or Cisco or any of these other vendors own, but we have control. I don't know who owns the information. I know that it's out there, right? This doesn't necessarily get to any of that, but it begs all of those questions about whose information is it, and if somebody in the city properly deletes it because it's no longer relevant, is it actually deleted? And if someone says, well, can we retrieve it? Well, we've already deleted it. Well, if it's stored somewhere else, the more you get into technology, the more murky I think it gets. All of this predated Administrative Code Section 19B that deals with surveillance technology and the surveillance impact reports and surveillance policies that departments have to provide for COIT review and Board of Supervisors approval. So, I don't want to spend the whole evening talking about technology, but I'm just saying there's a lot to unpacking and unpeeling technology as it relates to public records retention and disclosure.
Madam Chair.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I agree somewhat. I think the original framers of the ordinance, there was not as much or as sophisticated technology. Well, it was sophisticated at the time, but as much, I think they did their best to try and be all inclusive and future thinking as possible. And I think we should maintain that as best as possible, so that the ordinance doesn't have to be rewritten every other year. I get a little concerned about that because it sometimes will open a Pandora's box. The other thing is there is a little bit of a concern I have, and I think this was very forward thinking of those who wrote that L 6721L passage, where it says inspection, copying, documentary. First of all, I don't know what the word documentary means in this sense for public records. I think that word should be omitted.
Fine.
I agree.
The public information stored in electronic form shall be made available to the person requesting the information in any form requested, which is available or easily generated by the department. So that, that's interesting. And the reason why is because the choice of purchase of computer systems is decentralized. Every department can choose whatever they want. There is some push to have a kind of central common system, but it doesn't always go that way, and the city doesn't necessarily have a full requirement to do that, is to my recollection. So that would mean if they have a system that has the ability to print out, let's say, PDFs, but non-searchable PDFs, and that's the only thing that their technology can do. But this other department, all the way over on the other side of the city's organizational chart, can output PDF or an Excel file or a spreadsheet of some sort or a document, whatever. That level of is not inequitable. It is inequitable. And I think we need to kind of fix that part. So that way, a certain amount, like whatever technology is available for one needs to be, if it's in full bloom, needs to be available for all. And it can't be by choice per department, where they could potentially create a limit on what they can or cannot print out. Now, I realize some technology, the way it's designed that way, but we're in 2024 now, they could do anything. And we already know that because in platforms like Google Workspace, you can import almost anything and you can then export it as anything. It'll translate it or convert it. So this is not a unique or irregular, it's a nominal function at this point. I'll stop there.
Sure, go ahead.
At this point, I don't have a strong view on moving L or not moving L. I think that had to do with other structural ideas I had about slimming down 67.21 and having that just be a pretty clear expression of disclosure requirements and then moving the specifics to other places where they made sense. But I'm not fighting that fight today. I would again, and maybe it's also to Member Wolf, if you could take a look at 7922.570, et cetera, it looks to me like the three sentences that are now in L are really just a distillation of that, all of which had been in 6253.9. So I don't think L actually plows a whole lot of new territory. I think it just distills and restates state law. I think 67.21-1 is different and does, have as strong at the time made sense a policy statement on new systems. I don't know that this has always been adhered to, perhaps, as they say, adhered to in the breach. But I think this is our opportunity to state as clearly and succinctly as we can, more succinctly than I would say tonight or in general, what we think the city should do going forward for acquiring systems. I mean, we don't control what Coit does. Member Wolf and I might want to, but we don't. I think this is our opportunity to say, when investing in new systems, whether it's digitizing this or police that or property information systems or any number of things that the city invests in technology-wise, that it should be with an eye to records retention and disclosure in a way that makes records disclosure more possible, quicker, least cost, with less time invested in redaction, et cetera. So if what you want is a record of permit violations at X address, the system should be designed to generate a report of permit violations at an address without having to go through multiple iterations and steps and know that's not something we normally do and we this and that. No, you're buying a new system. That should be one of the considerations in the business requirements of the system. Bang. And that should apply across the board. Doesn't matter what department, what system. Okay. You've got, presumably there are property systems, there are case management systems for health records, for human services records, for inspection records, for all kinds of things. Those should all be designed with record access as a consideration, not like, we'll get, oh yeah, that's another thing, we'll get to that at some point. No, that should be a primary consideration, period. And this is trying to say that, and again, it may not be the most eloquent language, but this is our chance, I think, to fix that and to say that. Taking into account, the case we have now, all the stuff that we know is out there.
One question. Yeah. You said you were referring to making this align with CPR section. Was that 7922.7B?
Sorry, 7922.7B? No, 570.
Okay, what? 7922 sorry, just give me the number.
7922.570.
Okay.
And it's the sections thereafter, 570, 75, 80, 80, whatever. 70, 75, and 80. There's some A, B, and C there. Okay.
Okay.
And I think they have a point, though, Madam Chair.
Which is?
7922.7 it is Article 3. That is new. And that came into play in 2021. And that has some interesting language in it that is fairly broad, but specific enough with regards to regarding computer systems, what they call an enterprise system.
Right. That's actually a different concept I was going to get to, possibly.
Okay.
Okay. I'm looking, okay, coming back to this L section, do you think it would be appropriate? So I know that sometimes putting specifics makes things clearer, but I think sometimes the specifics make it seem antiquated. I don't know, is it anachronistic if it's too old or too, in any case? I'm wondering if we were to cut including disc, tape, printout, or monitor and just have it say, any form requested that is available to or easily generated by the department, its officers, or employees at a charge no greater than the cost of the media on which it is duplicated. What do you think of cutting out that other language, which makes it seem old?
I'm open to that.
The only question I have is, does the city still have records in that format?
Oh, I see where it would be the need would be to produce it on a disk because it's on some old system.
Right. Before there was an internet, let's say, they had, or the ability to network. Everything was stored locally onto a disk, and then that could have been put into a file, that kind of thing. Or it was taken off the network and only exists on a disk kind of thing. So I would instead use the word medium instead, because medium can mean all of it. Electronic medium.
No,
No. Sorry.
you're both making good points, but I mean, I'll just give a specific example and you'll say, that's nice. 25 years ago, in the late 1990s, when I was doing work on campaigns and elections in this city, in order to get the master voter file or a daily absentee request voter file, I actually had to get a huge, heavy, physical IBM 6250 tape that, I don't have it right in front of me, but it was blue and it was heavy, and that was the thing that they put the data on. This was before it was too big to fit on a disk. They didn't have a disk at the time. This was before USBs and big floppies and all kinds of things. Anyway, that was the system. And the point of this section was that they could not charge me more than the cost of that media, right? Even if it took, whether it took them 5 minutes or 5 hours to put it on there, that was the only system that it could be put on. And so that was an example of disk, monitor, printout, or tape, right? Because that was the thing at the time, period. And now it may be we can put it on a USB or we can email it to you or whatever the heck, right? But that was the thing at the time. And there may be other examples of that that are in systems now that are still in on tape or in Fortran or COBOL or whatever the heck, right? So
Well,
I don't want to limit that, is my point.
I don't know that by taking those words out that we are actually limiting it. We're just not specifying which media. And in fact, if we just say at a charge no greater than the cost of the media on which it is duplicated, does not say which media that is.
Right. I mean, I would just suggest, whether it's in this section or elsewhere, that the concept of you've got a request, right? Department, you've got a request. You're going to have to deal with this one way or the other. The sooner you get rid of it and the cheaper you get rid of it, the better. If you have a document, if you can just scan it into a PDF or make it into a PDF, email it to the person, and you're done with it, great. Cheap, fast, done.
You are saying something that may be true, but is not the thing that I am saying.
I understood.
So I'd like to deal with one thing at a time.
Okay.
So, Member Anderson, do you have any thoughts about whether to keep those words in or take them out? And is our default to not change things if we can't agree?
I think the only thing, sorry, not in here. I think the only thing that I'm thinking is that and we were speaking about specificity before, and sometimes when you get into specificity in ordinances, then at certain times we may be limited to that specificity. I would say any and all electronic medium, any informational medium, technological medium, which covers everything, is a broad term, goes forward farther without having to make amendments in the near future. And it also covers everything we know of as far as how the world is working. So we say any and all electronic medium covers the cloud as well as a disk machine. And that's what the point of this is. We're trying to establish a baseline for the things that we would like to see the city do. And it's across all your electronic medium, electronic technological mediums.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's a baseline that we're trying to create for everyone. So when they go out and purchase, so when they want to activate 6721-1 in whatever form or language we end up with, but that concept, they go out and they purchase, there's a minimum requirement.
Correct.
Or baseline, yeah.
one other suggestion, and this is either wise or weaselly, or maybe both, is to maybe insert the word reasonable or reasonably. So if we said, shall be made available in any form requested, which is reasonably available to or easily generated by the department, blah, 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 and let them say it was not reasonably available for us to do it, or we could not easily generate, blah, 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 just as we had that argument with MTA recently, et cetera. And so it sort of shifts the burden to the department to demonstrate in a way that it was not reasonably available or that they could not easily generate. But if they can, the default, the baseline is that they should.
Okay, I'm going to come back to what I said before, because I'm going to double down on this, because, okay, right now it says public information, okay, inspection and copying of public information stored in electronic form. And this is interesting because we're not talking about things that then need to be scanned or so things stored in a electronic form shall be made available to the person requesting the information in any form requested, and the word should be that is available to or easily generated by the department, its officers, or employees. Even if we stop there, is available to or easily generated by, that's going to define what the format is. Like at this point, something that's on, some 40-year-old sort of tape is not available or easily generated by the department. It's not. Like if it's in some storage place, like it already misses the mark on that.
Unless that's what they're using. I mean, MTA will come back and say, that's the disk system that we're using now to run the train control system. That's why we want to replace it. That may be proprietary software and no one's asking for it, but if that's the system they're using, then, that's what is their thing.
Okay, I still think if we stop it at available to or easily generated by the department, its officers, or employees, I think we can cut everything else before at a charge no greater than the cost of the media on which it is duplicated.
If all you're suggesting in this little bit is deleting the words including disk, tape, printout, or monitor,
yes,
I have no problem with that deletion.
That's all I've been suggesting. Because I think adding more words, because we already have the available, we already have, I don't know.
I might say reasonably available, but I would certainly support deleting the words including disk, monitor, printout, or tape.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it really changes the thrust of
just examples.
The passage, the information in any form requested, and
Correct.
Prior to that, stored in electronic form.
Right. So it's kind of like we've already gotten at all of the I think the various points that people have brought up, and I think by removing disk, tape, printout, or monitor, it brings it into present time.
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
It all becomes a question of how people interpret things that maybe we're not seeing right now. I mean, we've been surprised about how people interpret certain parts of the ordinance that, has caused some controversy. So, people get inventive, the more they it ruminates. So, but I'm okay with this. Yeah.
Now, here's a question. So, and I know Member Wolf was suggesting breaking out the next sentence as a new paragraph. Member Pilpel said he would keep it together. Member Anderson, what were your feelings on that? So with L, so we have, the first sentence, and then getting to the second sentence, it's inspection of documentary. And actually, I think Member Wolf is right. I think we can cut documentary in the first and second sentence. And I think when they say documentary, I think they're referring to documents.
Yeah.
But we don't need to limit records as documents. So I think if we're just talking about public information stored in electronic form or public information on a computer monitor,
right,
that's enough. So the question is then, do we make inspection of public information on a computer monitor need not be allowed? Do we make that a separate section, or do we still want to keep it attached to the previous now that we've removed monitor from the first one, and the question is, does this also apply to other ways of seeing information that don't have to do with computer monitors?
Well, talking about statutory interpretation for a moment, I can't remember if we had this discussion last time or the time before. There is a definition of public information in 67.20 current B. Public information shall mean the content of public records as defined in government code, whether provided in documentary form or in an oral communication, period. Public information shall not include computer software developed by the city and county of San Francisco as defined in. So I think upon thinking about it more, I think the reason that it says documentary public information is that it was referring back to the definition of public information in the ordinance, but limiting it to only documentary public information as opposed to information gleaned from an oral communication. It may seem weird and redundant and whatnot. I guess my point is I'm not yet ready to drop documentary here, although I get the concept, because that may have implications that I don't necessarily want. And ultimately, again, on L, I think somebody should go back and look at those CPRA sections. If this really is just duplicating, I mean, there was some part of, let's be clear, there was some part of the ordinance that intentionally duplicated language or concepts or sections of the Brown Act or of CPRA because there was concern that the Brown Act or CPRA could get watered down in Sacramento, and we wanted to be sure that we had at least a baseline here that we weren't going to go below, okay? I think there's still some concern about that, but I think that concern is diminished. It's not zero, but it's less. So I think protecting some language that says, regardless of what the state is doing, that at a minimum, here's how we want to operate is good. And so that's why I think having that be brief, clear, crisp is useful, okay? We could duplicate the entire CPRA in the ordinance. That makes it very wordy and more potentially confusing. So I'm not with that program. But again, I would say somebody should really read through that 7922.570 section and see what of that we should really distill and glean and copy here. And if L captures it about right, then let's go with that. If we need to tweak L, let's do that. But that's really where that all comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Does that?
I've heard what you're saying.
Okay.
I still want to know whether we're considering splitting this up or keeping it all together. Whether it stays here or moves somewhere. Like, does it, and I hear what you're saying, but for ease of understanding, or are you saying that we should only do whatever CPRA says and we shouldn't do anything unless we look at that?
I think we should look at that. I don't think that determines what we do, but I think that that's instructive. I guess my sense is to keep it together as 3 sentences. I mean, there are a lot of instances here in the ordinance where we've got multiple sentences that do similar things and are thus linked, but maybe do them differently. I'm not sure. No, let me rephrase. I don't want to see an ordinance that's got, sub I, sub II, sub III on everything. I think we have to balance substantive provisions and readability. And to the extent that these are related areas, because it's all about disclosure of public information stored in electronic form, I think they are related. I think it's fine to have them in one graph.
Member Wolf, I heard you saying something.
Yeah, I take a different perspective on that. My perspective is it's not even just on readability. It's about how people understand what they're reading. This law is written so that, or it needs to be, or should be written or rewritten, so that the general public has a very clear understanding of how it works, because that is who is engaging this law most of all. And the interpretation of it for the purpose of the respondents is not necessarily coming from the respondents. And we find that respondents also frequently misinterpret it and are not engaging legal counsel for proper interpretation. And then it's not necessarily across the board. I mean, even the Good Government Guide doesn't go this deep necessarily. It will try to paraphrase or explain it in a way that is usable, but the general public doesn't use the Good Government Guide. So it's all about what's written on this document that's important. And I think when there are multiple items, however related they are to a main topic or a theme, if one sentence in a paragraph has nothing to do with the next sentence, then we are talking about a list. And whether there are subparagraphs or subparagraphs, I don't care about that. I read law as does Member Pilpel does a lot. I don't care if the construction has to painfully make it so granular, as long as the general public has a clear idea of what they're reading. If they have to go into court, and many do pro se, they need to be able to not be humiliated by the court or by their adversary, their opponent, because they may have read something incorrectly that should be spelled out and be kind of pretty clear to understand. So when you clump things together like that, it makes it kind of not understandable unless there is some sort of delineation showing that one does not is not related to the next. I'll stop there.
Okay. For a variety of reasons, I don't want to continue debating or discussing this thing. I think if someone will take a look at the state law and either propose that we do something similar or different, if the ultimate language in the ordinance is stronger, better, different than state law, then absolutely we should call that out in a way that is very clear. If we're simply summarizing and restating what's already in law elsewhere, then I don't think we need to do as much with that. So I think my inclination is just to punt at this point, remove the including disk, monitor, printout, or tape, and move on. And I would again encourage anyone listening, including Member Wolf, to take a stab at 67.21-1 and the policy language in there, because I think this really is, that's really in my view, the more important section about what we think city policy should be in purchasing new systems and adapting existing systems. And I think this was not perfect, but pretty good 25 years ago. And I think it is not great now. I think it does not speak to nearly the universe of what's out there now and what we can reasonably see on the horizon. And there should be some effort to reconcile this with 19B and some other things that Coit has been up to. And again, the software as a service and cloud computing and other technologies that I'm not as familiar with.
Okay, so I think in order to move on, I've put a big comment on this. I'm saying Member Pilpel suggests moving this to the top of the next section. Members Wolf and Anderson think it should stay here. See CPRA section and make them parallel, 7922.570 and beyond. And then CPRA 7922.7 Article 3 is new and includes other information to be considered. Chair LaHood wants to cut documentary in first and second sentences. Member Pilpel says we should check with, I'm putting DCAs to make sure this isn't required. Member Wolf suggests breaking this into 3 separate points since the sentences aren't entirely related. Member Pilpel says, try to keep parallel with CPRA. We need to look at it. Does anybody have any other thoughts that I have not captured explicitly here before we move on?
You have a great ear.
Oh, thanks.
Maybe something again about the policy section in 21-1.
Oh, well, we're moving on to that. And
Oh,
there's more there.
I thought we were still there, but
No, that I just want to move away from L.
Yeah.
And right now, what I have with the policy section is Member Pilpel suggests discussion section with the Department of Technology before updating wording. Also, the ordinance says nothing about social media, text messaging, other messaging systems, or AI. Section needs to consider policies on all of these. Okay.
And sorry, just to be clear, I'm not saying that city departments or DT should be dictating to us what the language should be. I just would like that
Before we update the wording. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to make sure it's relevant. That's how I took that to be. But Member Anderson, Member Wolf, do you have any specific thoughts on how language we should either take out or add into this section, knowing that we haven't discussed with the Department of Technology yet? But do you have any thoughts on this? And Member Wolf, I know professionally you might have some particular guidance to offer on this.
Yeah, I need to meditate on it a bit. But the other, I guess I don't know how to say this except to say it. Not every department listens to Department of Technology.
Mm-hmm.
Department of Technology does not create policy. And so they can request policy, or they can request executive orders to be done. But this has been the kind of the big struggle for the past 2 decades at least, on various matters with regards to the city's computer system and networks.
Mm-hmm.
So, while we might get a good answer from, it's like asking the department, the Office on Disability for their opinion. Then it's got to go to like the city attorney
Mm-hmm.
to form, right? It's to follow the law. There's multiple facets, but in this case, this is a difficult one with regards to Department of Technology.
Right. And again, that's why I'm not suggesting that they dictate to us, and that, there are other concerns among the various city departments. There's I think they still call it the CIO Council. I neither want to entirely constrain departments about how to do something that only they know how to do, nor do I want to give them no guidance. I just think that this, policy about computer technology, again, is the opportunity for us to say, in broad terms, this is what makes sense from the public interest in disclosure. So as you're thinking about stuff, bear in mind these, sort of cornerstone principles. And I think, and we can figure out the best wording for that. Maybe what we come out of tonight's discussion is saying that it is, hardware, software, systems, cloud, drones, surveillance. It's a list of those, social media. A list of those kinds of things that at a minimum should be guided by this policy. I don't know.
I've been listening, and I think that what we want to do, as I indicated before, is lay down a baseline. How they implement it is up to the departments and the Department of Technology. That's not us. We're just saying that in order for that the baseline for departments to respond to requests for public records should at minimum involve having a system that can spit out reports and spit out information in the most cost-effective way. How they manage to do it, whether with chipmunks or whichever way they decide to do it, is not up to us. We're just saying this is what you need to do in order to respond to requests from the public for information. And then we could be here all night trying to figure out how they're going to do it. We're just saying these are the things that we need. So I would say we just stick to these are the things that we need to have, the public needs to have access to in the most cost-efficient way necessary. Now figure out how you're going to do it.
Right. So,
And after that, I don't need to talk to the Department of Technology. They do that kind of technological stuff. They can figure that out from there.
and city departments have their own IT staff.
Could be,
Right.
but they'll have to figure it out for themselves.
Right. I mean, Dale is retired now, but he spent a certain amount of time arguing about stuff and things. You know that.
Yes, I do, but
Right.
that's not for
No,
us.
correct.
We're just doing this.
So just as an example, if someone made a request for some record and the city said, well, I'm not sure if we have that, they go to Cisco or Microsoft and say, well, it's not easily accessible, but if we pulled to something, we could, and we would have to do this every time in order to get blah, blah, blah. That's not a great system. Similarly, if the city purchased, owned, or had access to some technology that allows text messages or allows some kind of communication, but doesn't retain them at all, like Telegram or whatever the heck that is, right? Yeah. So there's no retention period possible, period. That's not a good technology, knowing that there's at least a 2-year retention period for some document or some records. So that's the kind of thing where they would have to figure out, bearing in mind these principles.
I do hear you on that, but the Sunshine Ordinance says that what we want the city to do, what the voters have said that they want the city to do is make public records available to the public. Mm-hmm. We're saying, okay, if we're going to make changes in this, we're saying, okay, this is what a public record is. These are the things you have to disclose. Now, if you're going to purchase new information systems or information technological medium systems, that having those systems that will spit out this kind of information would be very helpful to you to do. But you still have a responsibility to the public to supply them with records that are public record. We're saying this is a way you can do it. This is a baseline for you being able to function in your capacity as departments in the city and also comply with the Sunshine Ordinance that was passed by the voters of the city of San Francisco. And it's up to the departments, department heads and their ITs to figure out how to do it. And all we can do is suggest, because we can't mandate they do anything. But I say that we lay out the best possible way of doing the information as we understand it. And then it's up to the departments. We'll continue to ask for the information and then make determinations as to whether or not they've complied with what the Sunshine Ordinance says. But I don't know that it's fruitful for us to argue about how they do it. No. I'm just thinking we just say, this is what we need. These kind of systems supply that. And then we go on.
I don't think we're in disagreement. I think this is just where some crisp language that says if you have the choice between spending more money or making it more difficult to disclose records, or spending less money and making it easier to disclose records, then you should choose the latter, not the former.
And I believe within the ordinance as it's written, it says the most cost effective, doesn't it? In there somewhere, didn't I?
Yeah, cost effective is definitely in here.
Cost effective is in there, so we've stated that.
Right. Well, it also says here efficient and economical.
Yeah.
So,
So
yeah, we're not in disagreement.
Okay, so we've said.
Can I, just taking a stab at this, and if there's disagreement or you think we're not ready to do this, I'm going to suggest some minor edits that I think, if anything, will just tighten things up a little and possibly help. I'm wondering even if saying computer systems is necessary, because if we just say technology feels like a broader term that maybe encompasses more of what we're talking about. And I know, Member Pilpel, you suggested including language that specifies hardware, software systems, cloud storage, drones, surveillance, social media, messaging. We could think about these things, or we could try to word it so broadly as to encompass those. And I don't know, and maybe our deputy city attorneys will say, no, you have to be specific. And if you're not specific, so I don't know, or if some of you have better thoughts on this, but some minor edits I would suggest would be, so it is the policy of the city and county of San Francisco to, I just want to say, use technology to reduce the cost of public records management, including the cost of collecting, maintaining, and disclosing records subject to disclosure to members of the public. Can we just say disclosing records, or do we need to say disclosing records subject to disclosure to members of the public?
I'm happy to lose subject to disclosure.
Okay. So, and disclosing records, period. And I would cut the rest of the sentence. And I don't even know why it says under this section.
I'm happy to lose under this section.
Okay.
I'm not yet ready to lose two members of the public.
Oh, okay. We could keep two members of the public. Okay.
I may be okay with that
Yeah,
later.
I'm okay with two members of the public. Hang on, let me undo this part and just split this a little bit. Yes, disclosing records to members of the public. I like that. Okay. And then in the next sentence, so to the extent that it is technologically and economically feasible, yay.
Hold on. Can I suggest? How about to the extent feasible, comma?
I disagree.
Let's hang on for 1 second.
Right.
To the extent that it is technologically and economically feasible, I would like to say departments shall program and design these systems to ensure convenient, efficient, and economical public access to records. And then I question the last part, but essentially what I'm saying we should cut is that use computer systems to collect and store public records, because I think it's redundant. And then I'd like to ask what you all think about, and shall make public records easily accessible over public networks such as the internet. Is that obvious, or do we need to say that?
Oh, no, it's not. No, because if you don't say that, then somebody will say that public records are not accessible over the internet. I think that absolutely has to remain.
Okay, do we have to say
that's a mandate right there.
Do we have to say over public networks such as the internet, or can we say easily accessible online or over the internet? Bruce, what's the?
Well, the internet online is a lower form of the term for the internet.
I would say over the internet.
I wouldn't necessarily, online's more colloquial.
Okay.
Internet is a thing. So I would leave the internet because it's all encompassing.
Okay, can we cut public networks such as?
Well, no, because then if the city requires you to be on their private network and they wanted you to create a login and a password and all, we already went through this with Next Request.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, so leaving that part, but can we cut that use computer systems to collect and store public records? Because everybody is using computer systems to collect and store public records.
Well, I think in the first sentence, when you suggested dropping computer, I think I'm okay with that if you replace computer technology with systems and technology. so that it's in the broad scheme of
Agreed.
systems and technology should be used to reduce the cost of public records management and disclosure. Bang.
Yeah.
Member Wolf, what were you saying about that?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, you have to cover the most broad description of what is being used, not only in existence today, but what you anticipate to be used in the next 10 or 20 years.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't think that, what do you call it? Toasters would have chips in them, but apparently everything's got a chip in it now, and whatever,
The other thing is that the term systems, the other more used term is platform,
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
right? So, these terms change as quickly as social media lingo.
Right.
I mean, it depends upon who creates something in Silicon Valley and then, pegs that term, and it goes viral. Everybody starts using that term. So we want to use the most I'll use that word colloquial. What is the most, common use colloquial word down to its most derivative? Now, platform is now considered a derivative.
I mean,
So should we say systems, platforms, and technology to reduce the cost of public records management?
that's a good placeholder for the moment. Sure.
Yeah. I
Okay.
would. And frankly, what I'll do is I'll consult some of my subject matter experts, and I'll see what they come up with. Because, what ends up happening is somebody in the city will say, well, I know somebody in Silicon Valley, maybe let's see what they think about this. And they'll say, oh yeah, there's this other thing that we use. And then somebody in the city will say, okay, well, we'll use that because it's not inclusive of the ordinance. And you've got another, can of worms.
And I don't know how we describe AI right now, because what we now call generative AI may be superseded by some other form of AI in
Semantic.
years, or right, functional or
Right.
colloquially, Harlequinian. Who the
Yeah.
heck knows? I don't know.
Okay. If we jump to B, then if we change it to departments purchasing new platforms, or actually, is it purchasing? Should we say using new? Oh, but this is about purchasing. But
No, it's about purchasing. Absolutely.
Okay, purchasing new platforms or systems.
Well, careful, because there's not just purchase, there's license agreement. I would say purchasing or using. Yeah, but they're not. Yeah, but hold on, but they're not
You still
necessarily
have to buy a
acquired.
license. You
Let's
still
say
have to buy a
purchasing or
license.
using, because I think purchasing or using.
Again,
does-
let's
yeah.
start with purchasing or using. If we need to tweak that, we can tweak that.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Right.
So departments purchasing or using new platforms or systems shall attempt to reach the following goals as a means to achieve. Can we just say to achieve? Well, as a means to achieve lower costs to the public in connection with the public disclosure of records.
Hold on.
That's
I lost a few words in the process. I think I didn't have as a means. I had shall have the following goals to achieve
Yeah, I
lower
would agree with
costs.
that. Yeah.
Of the following goals to achieve lower costs in connection with the disclosure of public records.
I think that works. If that works for everyone else.
Because
but here the lower cost to the public.
but careful.
Oh, we're keeping that.
No.
Okay.
I wanted to loop to the public because I think that cuts both ways. So it's to the public that's a public requester, or it's to the public generally in terms of government costs. I don't care. I'm just interested in achieving lower costs in connection with the disclosure of public records.
Yeah, but I think the intent is the former, that it's lower cost to the public requester, to the public trying to access the information.
But Bruce, I actually think it's both. I think that we should not be spending more public money on systems that don't achieve good public goals. And
I know, but that's not our job. Our job is to make sure that the public is served in getting the public records. And by just saying to achieve lower costs, they'll say, okay, well, we bought this thing, but it doesn't provide this now to the public anymore, this thing.
Yeah, so then that's a bad choice.
Yeah, but then now you've forced the ordinance to be interpretive.
No.
And who's going to, then it's an argument of who's making good decisions or not. We want to be very fairly specific.
All right, so
as to
leave
who
it
is
to the
benefiting
public
from
for the
it.
moment.
Okay, I'm going to read back to you what I think I've synthesized from all of these comments. Departments purchasing or using new platforms or systems shall attempt to reach the following goals to achieve lower costs to the public in connection with the disclosure of public records.
That's fine.
Okay.
Can you put an asterisk next to purchasing and using?
I'm going to
Because
put a
we-
comment that says, and what this is note to us. What
Yeah.
comment would you like me to add?
Just to flush it out.
Okay.
With those that are,
Think about this language.
If you want
right.
to put in brackets there, I also had acquiring or modifying.
Okay. Okay.
Can I try my hand on fewer words than 1, 2, and 3?
Yes, I'm going to throw out mine because mine was very minimal, and then we can
Okay.
hear yours. I was going to suggest cutting a computer in the first and making systems plural in all three. So implementing systems that permit, blah, blah, blah. But if others have other thoughts, or if you think we need to say platforms and systems, we can do that here, unless we think, since B says platforms or systems becomes a stand-in for both of those.
Why don't I just try reading
Go
mine
for it.
and you can tell me what
Okay.
you think. 1, exempt information should be segregated or filed separately from otherwise
Oh, I like that.
disclosable information. Period. 2, reproduction of electronic copies of records in a format that is generally recognized as an industry standard should be allowed.
Whoa, should be allowed.
Period.
Let's say, let's not say should be allowed, is required.
shall we?
Okay. All right. Anyway.
But I like where you're going.
Okay.
Yeah.
And 3, records should be made available through the internet, or as Bruce wants to say, a public something or other, right? I don't like the largest nonprofit, non-proprietary public computer network. I don't know what the heck that is. Anyway,
That's SF Wi-Fi.
sure. For which you may or may not need a password this week. Anyway, records should be made available through the internet, consistent with information security requirements, period. Whatever those are.
Publicly available internet,
Yeah,
because there are private internets.
Fine. Anyway, that's where I was going with
Okay.
it. Does that?
I like that.
Okay.
Member Anderson, what do you think?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, give me 1 second.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me just say something about that. I'm not trying to throw a monkey wrench in this. I'm just offering some guidance.
Okay.
That whole line where it says largest nonprofit, non-proprietary public computer network, that's a lot of mumbo, kind of sounds like mumbo jumbo.
Mhm.
But what it actually means is that it's not on even a privately paid for network like Comcast or AT&T, that it wouldn't cost the public any money to access the actual network in order to get the public information.
Right.
It could also include a VPN. It could also include what's called a content delivery network, a CDN, which is a quasi semi-private network. So I just want you to think about, in any kind of replacement of those words, that is what the current parlance is, and the differences between the different kinds of quote unquote public networks.
So Bruce, can you Which of these words do we need to include and which are optional given that the city never implemented free Wi-Fi everywhere?
Well, the purpose of my interpretation is the purpose of them using the word nonprofit is to make sure that it's not for profit. It's not proprietary, as the next words depict. So it's kind of redundant, but it's not. The largest means is that it's accessible for everyone, no matter where they log into or have access to the internet.
All right.
And publicly available internet doesn't suffice?
No, because people will say that access that let's say Comcast is publicly available. You just have to pay for it.
Oh, how about freely
available.
accessible, publicly available?
Well, still, Comcast is freely accessible as
Okay.
long as you pay for it.
No. Freely meaning free of charge.
I understand that, but now I'm creating a new interpretation that the way people will think about it. If you say on a free and public internet, then you're talking about free of charge, like free beer or free ice cream.
Are you in favor of that?
Yeah, I like watermelon ice pops.
Can I for a moment?
Please go ahead.
I'm happy to defer to Member Wolf on the technical term and free or freely accessible, public internet, Wi-Fi, whatever. That's cool. In practical terms, the way I always thought of this, the way I thought of it 30 and 25 years ago and today, is you should be able to walk into the main library or a branch library and, after waiting not more than 5 minutes, get access to a computer device where you can look up whatever department, whatever record you're trying to get. And if you need to pay not more than 10 cents a page to print something out, that you can get a printed copy of whatever you're looking at on the screen that was available on a free, publicly accessible computer network, period. That's the concept that, you don't have to pay for something at home. You don't have to have Comcast. You don't have to have a phone. You don't have to have a flip phone. You don't have to have a smartphone. You don't have to have a BlackBerry. You don't have to have strawberries. You don't have to have it. You should be able to go to your library when they're open, reasonable hours, and get the information that you're looking for. It shouldn't be that hard. And however we express it here, that those are sort of minimum terms.
Yeah, so I'm going to read back.
I don't want to say all that in this section, but
Right.
that's the concept.
Member Wolf, would this, and if I am missing words or you think we still need nonprofit in here, tell me what words to put back in. But does it suffice to say records, maybe it shouldn't be should, records shall be made freely available through the publicly accessible internet consistent with the requirement for security of information?
I think in these three, I had should for all three because they were goals.
Oh, I like shall, but I'll put shall.
Okay, I'm not disagreeing.
I don't know. Team, what do we say? Should or shall?
Shall.
Okay.
All right.
Should is like we hope that you will do it.
Wouldn't
Shall
it be
is you must.
This is Member Anderson. Member Wolf,
Yes.
where is there a freely available internet that you don't have to go through a Comcast or an AT&T to get to?
So there's the city's Wi-Fi, ubiquitous Wi-Fi network in the parks,
Okay.
and also at the library branches, and the network name is SF Wi-Fi. That is provided by the city, free of charge, without any tracking. We went through a big deal around security and tracking and anonymity some years ago. That's one way. And Member Pilpel, suggested in the library itself, kind of thing. There are others. There is something called the Bay Area Mesh, and with a very low, like you can get free equipment for it. You can just set up an antenna, point it, and get connected into that mesh, and you've got access to it's a very slow internet, but you still have access to it free of charge, and it's ubiquitous. It's accessible in that way, that kind of thing. Here, I think what they're saying is that all public information should be free of charge for the public, unless it needs to be put on some kind of medium, of which you should only pay for what the cost of the medium is. Mm-hmm. But either way, the access to it, if it's being made available publicly, there should be no barriers to it, either by dollars and cents or by giving away your personal information.
Right.
Okay, so in terms of the wording, records shall be made freely available through the publicly accessible internet consistent with the requirement for security of information. Does that meet the standard you're looking for?
No.
Okay.
No, because I don't know what the freely publicly available internet is.
Oh, wait, made freely available. I mean, that's just that there's no cost through. Okay, so what? Okay,
And
what
I
should
don't
we say?
disagree with the free. I can interpret, a couple of different ways.
Made available free of charge.
Free of charge.
Okay. Okay.
Because that's the point we're trying to make here.
Okay, made available free of charge through the publicly accessible internet.
I'd like to think about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Not right now,
okay.
But yeah.
I'm sorry.
No.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it's kind of like, it's like, is it a city owned? In the current language, it says largest nonprofit. So that doesn't require it to be city owned. It just requires it to be, a like nonprofit run internet.
You know what it is though? As somebody when you talked about before about looking for colloquial, if you say largest nonprofit, proprietarily public computer network, 90% of the people out there don't know you mean the internet.
Oh, of course.
Right. So if people reading this don't know that you mean the internet, then we need to say something else.
That's right. So yes, I would not use a public computer network.
Okay. Okay. So should I just put a comment on this where we say, look into this, or what are we asking ourselves or the DCAs?
How about waiting for Bruce to come up with some alternatives?
Member Wolf will come up with better language for this.
Well, I think we're in general agreement on the concept, which is good. We're looking to Member Wolf for some ideas.
There was better and more precise language for this.
There you go. Let me also throw out one example that's now bothering me. Let's say that you requested some record from the health department, and the health department said, sure, we could give you that record, but that involves your medical information. So if you'll sign a HIPAA release, then we can, yada, yada, yada. And you say, okay, if I sign this HIPAA release, then where are you going to put it? And if they say, well, we'll just put it in a thing where you can find it on the internet. And if somebody doesn't quite understand where they're getting at, I don't want somebody to sign some HIPAA waiver and find their medical record on the internet in some, what's the thing that the city's using that we don't like?
Nextdoor? No, not Nextdoor. Next Request.
Next Request, right. Whether it's a Next Request, whether it's there for 5 minutes or for the next 5 years, I don't want any of that. But I still want someone to be able to get access to their record. So that might involve creating an account or a password just for purpose of getting your record that you asked for.
That's correct.
So there are ways to weigh the, that's why I think information security requirements is important. So if it's important to have some security around that information for a good reason, fine. If it's just that you want access to tomorrow's Board of Supervisors agenda, That should be on the internet. No password, no anything, blah, blah, blah. If you bring your own device to a park or to a playground, Market Street, or a library, fine. And if not, if you go to a library, you don't need anything other than an idea that I want tomorrow's Board of Supervisors agenda. You should be able to leave there in 10 minutes with a printed copy of it. Shouldn't be that hard.
Or downloaded copy.
Yeah.
I agree in
broad terms.
for the most part with that. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And I've added this note here that we're seeking future guidance from Member Wolf.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, it's a good time because at the end of November, I'm going to be at a big open source nonprofit, absolutely run developers conference.
Great.
And this will be it's a place where I actually have a ability to kind of hold some time and space with a lot of different folks in this kind of field.
You know, in light of that, what I'm going to do immediately after this meeting is I'm going to, and are we allowed to do this? May I send this to Ms. Peterson to have it distributed to the committee? And this will be the document that will be in our next agenda.
Great.
Okay.
Or a tweaked version of that if it's been superseded into.
Well, what I'm going to do is we're not going to touch it again, because that way I feel comfortable putting it out there, because that way if somebody requests it, it's going to be this same one. This is just the my annotations. So we may add other things like the document member Pilpel provided, which you're going to add. But this essentially, so if anybody's listening and you want a copy of this, Ms. Peterson will send you the copy of the thing that is going to be sent out to the members.
And if you want to take a day or two to finish and dress this up, that's fine. You know.
Okay, it's almost easier. It's almost easier if I just send it, because then it's
All right.
yeah,
Whatever.
And it's a living document. We keep amending it along the way. So and when you all come back at the next meeting, if there are things you've thought about, for example, with Member Wolf with this, we can go back to some of our earlier annotations. As long as we're not discussing outside of this, I think having everyone working on their own on it, knowing that this is the exact same version that we're going to attach to the agenda and we're not going to make any other changes between now and then. Okay.
Yes.
Could we try to do at least another section?
I would be happy to. If how's everyone doing? It's 5 to 6. Sorry. Go ahead.
I actually have to go. I have family thing I got to deal with here.
Okay.
Can I would like to go through 67.22 before, Member Wolf, before you leave. Can I just say my intention on 22 is just to tweak a couple of words, but I really have no substantive suggestion to change it. I think it is good. I think it is bold. I think it is different from CPRA, and I think we should keep it. So, you know, unless you've got a radically different view, I would hope that we could just blow through 22 in your absence, and we can certainly come back to that in the future.
Yeah, I think that's fine with me.
Okay, and you'll have our annotations.
Yeah, that's great. Just a closing point for me, and this goes back to what Member Maxine had said earlier with regards to baseline, and it's just an overall thought. That is should be like the lowest bar that the city should follow, but they should consider it their marching orders as required. But the idea also is that it would be great if the city can just come under one system, so that everybody's using the same system.
For what?
For for instance, if you were to put all public records on a web page is a very basic, ubiquitous type of technology. You can create a web page using any number of platforms, but the result is the same. You still get a web page. So it's kind of finding some sort of ubiquitous outcome so that the public, no matter what system created it, the public sees and feels and can operate it in the same way. And that way you don't end up with multitudes of different systems that are siloed in this department, in that agency, and that enterprise department, whatever. And, you know, and it becomes like a big messy kind of thing. I mean, it's kind of like using Office 365. The city made a decision. Everybody uses Office 365 for productivity. But anything else is your choice. You don't like using Zoom, you want to use WebEx, use WebEx. You don't like WebEx, you want to use BlueJeans, use BlueJeans. Okay? Sure, in the end, everybody gets to be on a meeting online, but the controls are different. The way it doesn't work on every computer that well.
You lost me in the specific. What are you saying in terms of records or formats, that everything should be a PDF?
No, not records and formats. I'm talking about that's like the basic or the lowest bar requirement that we are requiring for systems that are to be producing public records for like copies or different file formats or things like that. They must all produce in the same way. They can't produce in different ways.
What's an example of the same versus different?
If one department says we don't like we don't like Microsoft products and we want to use LibreOffice instead, well, their file format is actually a more publicly regarded format than the proprietary Microsoft format.
Okay, so if for whatever reason I prefer a comma separated file versus an Excel file, what's the difference if I can have it either way? I mean, are we really needing to spell it out like that? How is that helpful?
Well, I'm just putting it out for thought. I'm not saying it's needed or not, but the way technology is going now, and everybody's creating their own thing. My concern is that as things become more distinct from each other, that will then mean everybody's got to have different systems all under their own umbrella, or everybody's going to have different systems that the public is going to have to play merry-go-round on. I'm a little concerned about how we can't predict the future, but what we can do is say, here's the absolute baseline, and there should be at least a basic system that is used, or a basic platform that is used, so that the most basic thing can be produced.
You may need to come back at a future meeting and give me some other specific, because you kind of lost me in all that.
Okay, no problem.
Bruce, thank you. Or member Wolf, thank you. This has been really, really helpful.
You got it.
Thank
you.
you.
Good night, everybody.
Take care. Good night, Bruce.
Good night.
Member Wolf noted absent at 7 p.m.
Okay.
Just one comment on that. I think the best example of having a baseline platform that the majority of people can access is power cords for computers.
Mm-hmm.
Why are they all different? Why can't I use the same power cord for my computer as I use for my phone?
Yeah.
And why don't they all plug into the same thing? And it's like, okay, I made my nice proprietary one, so mine will be different from yours. But as far as an everyday usage, it would make more sense.
Right.
To have,
if I could just say, here, use this
here,
one. Yeah.
use this
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that's a kind of simplistic way of thinking of things. But that is one way to look at having that kind of system.
That makes more sense to me. So if we had language that said something like promoting, developing, and using common standards for whatever, that would make more sense to me. Okay.
Okay, so how about this? Can we give ourselves 3 or 4 minutes to just read through this, even though maybe you've already, I would like 3 minutes to read 6722.
Take them.
Okay.
Take it. Ready?
I like this section and we don't pay enough attention to it. Okay, members, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think I already expressed my general happiness with this section. I do have some suggested edits.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't I roll through those quickly? Okay. In A, I would substitute each for every beginning. I think knowledgeable is missing an E in the middle somewhere.
Hold on, in E, you said?
No.
Oh, it's
sorry.
missing an E.
Yeah. You'll work on it. As an editor,
It's correct.
all right. As an editor, I think you're very knowledgeable about spelling. Never mind. On line 2, after including oral information, I would delete the 3 words "to the public."
Mm-hmm.
On line 4, but in any event shall, I would say, designate rather than arrange.
hold on, line 4, wait, 1, 2, 3. I'm sorry, could you just repeat that last thing
Yep.
again?
But in any event shall designate
Mm-hmm.
rather than arrange. So it would read, but in any event shall designate an alternate person for this function.
Okay.
In the absence. And then in the last sentence, if a department has multiple bureaus or divisions, the department, insert head,
Mhm.
may designate a person or persons, just moving the last 4 words, to provide this information for each bureau or division.
Mm-hmm.
I think it reads better. That's A.
Yep.
B, second line, and timely and responsive a basis as possible to any rather than those,
Mm-hmm.
to any members of the public. Delete the 2 words who are.
Mm-hmm.
Next sentence, this section shall not, I would delete be interpreted to, shall not curtail, blah, 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 between insert city before employees.
Mm-hmm.
And I think next line, not disruptive of his or her operational duties, insert a comma after duties.
I'm going to take out his or her. I'm going to say not disruptive of operational duties.
That's fine. I hear that bold is a 4-letter word, by the way. Never mind.
Keep going.
Yes. C, no insert city employee.
Mm-hmm.
Respond to an inquiry or inquiries from, how about a member of the public? Trying to be very consistent about member of the public, period. If it would take the insert city employee.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of obscure things, by the way, this is known as the 15-minute rule,
Hmm.
and we never talk about that, but this goes way back.
Okay.
And some have interpreted this to mean that you shouldn't spend more than 15 minutes on a records request, and that was not the idea. That was only,
Interesting.
yeah. This
Okay.
was, anyway, and then in D, first word should be city rather than public employees.
Yep.
6 lines down, performance of his or her, performance of, you want to do his or her again?
Nope.
Performance.
Get rid of it. Hang on one second.
Okay.
We don't even need it. Interfere with the employee's performance of their duties.
All right. Or obstruct the routine operation of their office. In a manner that.
No, the office, because it's not just their office. The office within which they work. Sure. Okay.
All right.
that's
It
fine.
could go either way.
Okay.
That's fine. Okay. The next, this may be controversial. The next sentence, the in adopting this subdivision, that sentence,
Mhm.
this is no longer a Board of Supervisors thing. I just really want to drop that sentence.
What do you mean it's no longer a board of supervisors thing?
Well, because this is now
Oh.
a public ordinance.
Oh, I
so
see what you're saying.
It's
Yeah.
not really, I don't want to interpret the Board of Supervisors' intentions. I don't want to undermine the First Amendment. I just don't think that that helps. I want to keep the next sentence. I want to restate the next sentence to say, nothing in this subsection shall be construed to provide additional free speech. I'm adding.
I don't know that it just writes to city's employees beyond those recognized by courts now or in the future under the First Amendment.
Well, no, there is a section in E that actually creates a new right.
Okay, but nothing in this section shall be construed to provide.
Okay. Well, that's why I want to be very clear. Nothing in this I had subsection, but if you want to leave section, that's okay. Shall be construed to provide additional free speech rights to city employees beyond those recognized by courts. And I would delete now or in the future under the First Amendment and just say, or to create any new private cause or action or defense to disciplinary action.
I think we could cut now or in the future because that's sort of, because it's either recognized by courts.
Right.
Yeah.
And I wanted to have a reference to free speech rights, but I didn't, for whatever reason at the time, I didn't want to have a thing about the First Amendment.
Actually, I would not say free speech because I think that's actually limiting. I would just say
Okay.
under the First Amendment.
Okay. I can live with that.
Okay, Member Anderson, before we keep going, because that was a lot, unless, well, actually, there's
It's
a
very
little bit more.
tweaky. It's
Yeah.
just,
If you want to go through to the end, and then I want to hear from Member Anderson, and I might go through and reread
that's
the
fine.
changes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So then on E,
Mhm.
and again, it's not much, notwithstanding any other provision of this chapter,
Why?
because this, because chapter 67 is the whole ordinance.
No,
I don't,
say this ordinance because people don't know what a chapter means.
well, there are other things here where we talked about articles and sections and subsections.
But nowhere have I seen chapter used.
Yeah, I can find it elsewhere. We did say, we've said it in other places here. I didn't do a search, but we have.
I'm going to tell you right now. Okay, there are article something, chapter something in sections we have not gotten to yet.
Right.
Hang on one second. Let me see. Actually, no, that we have not used the word chapter in anything that we've edited yet.
Well, maybe all right. If you want to leave it ordinance, leave it ordinance.
Okay.
Not, we can, not a big deal. Okay. Instead of public, I would say city employees shall not be discouraged from, comma, delete or, discouraged from, comma, disciplined for, comma, or retaliated against as a result of.
I'm going to say for, not as a result of. Disciplined for or retaliated against for.
Okay.
Oh gosh, that's as a result of, no.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah. You're not going to like it, but it's
I don't know that I like this, but keep going.
all right. Or retaliated against as a result of whatever, disclosing any, delete information that is,
Mhm.
or disclosing any public information or a public record to, delete any journalist or
Mm-mm.
to,
Gotta leave it.
to any member of the public.
Nope. Any
Fine.
journalist or any member of the public.
Fine.
Okay. That's my privilege.
All right. Be that as it may. All right. And then finally, any city rather than public employee.
Mhm.
So the point is here, the ordinance does create a specific cause of action if they're disciplined for disclosing public information.
Okay, so here's
And so that's why I wanted to distinguish that from the other First Amendment stuff in D.
okay, Member Anderson, would you like me to read back what these changes are, or would you like to weigh in with your thoughts first?
I'd like to hear the changes.
Okay, so what I have, section 6722, release of oral public information. Release of oral public information shall be accomplished as follows. Each department head shall designate a person or persons knowledgeable about the affairs of the department to provide information, including oral information, about the department's operations, plans, policies, and positions. I think we have to have to the public. You can't cut that. We have to leave to the public. Yep. Okay. I'm rejecting that. Okay. To the public about the department's operations, plans, policies, and positions. The department head may designate themselves,
Singular.
themselves, 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 selves.
No.
Yeah,
Singular.
no, it's weird. Yeah.
Whatever.
May designate themselves, the department. Maybe we say department heads may designate themselves.
Then you have to take out the.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm gonna do department heads may designate themselves. For this assignment, but in any event shall designate an alternate person for this function in the absence of the person assigned primary responsibility. That feels like a mouthful, but I'll leave it for now. If a department has multiple bureaus or divisions, the department head may designate a person or persons to provide this information for each bureau or division. Correct. The role of the person or persons so designated shall be to provide information on a timely and responsive basis, provide information on as timely and responsive a basis as possible to any members of the public not requesting information from a specific person. This section shall not curtail existing informal contacts between city employees and members of the public when these contacts are occasional, acceptable to the employee and the department, not disruptive of operational duties, and confined to accurate information not confidential by law. No city employee shall be required to respond to an inquiry or inquiries from a member of the public if it would take the city employee more than 15 minutes to obtain the information responsive to the inquiry or inquiries. D, city employees shall not be discouraged from or disciplined for the expression of their personal opinions on any matter of public concern while not on duty, so long as the opinion, 1, is not represented as that of the department and does not misrepresent the department position, and 2, does not disrupt coworker relations, impair discipline or control by superiors, erode a close working relationship premised on personal loyalty and confidentiality, interfere with the employee's performance or their duties, or obstruct the routine operation of their office in a manner that outweighs the employee's interest in expressing that opinion. Whew. Nothing in this section shall be construed to provide rights to city employees beyond those recognized by courts under the First Amendment, or to create any new private cause of action or defense to disciplinary action. E, notwithstanding any other provisions of this ordinance, city employees shall not be discouraged from, disciplined for, or retaliated against as a result of disclosing any public information or a public record to any journalist or any member of the public. Any city employee who is disciplined for disclosing public information or a public record shall have a cause of action against the city and the supervisor imposing the discipline. What do you think?
That works.
Okay. The only thing that gives me pause, even though I understand Member Pilpel not wanting to say the Board of Supervisors gives this, do we want to say anything affirmative about First Amendment rights enjoyed by public employees? Like just sort of a statement of fact, or is it?
Read back
Okay.
what you have in the sentence that stays.
So the sentence that stays says nothing in this section shall be construed to provide rights to city employees beyond those recognized by courts under the First Amendment, or to create any new private cause of action or defense to disciplinary action.
Where do you want to insert?
I'm thinking, I understand why Member Pilpel wants to cut the sentence before it about in adopting this subdivision, the Board of Supervisors intends merely to restate and affirm court decisions recognizing the First Amendment rights enjoyed by public employees. I don't know, maybe we don't need it now that I'm reading that again. I don't know. It sort of jumps to say you don't get any more rights without stating these are your rights.
I had proposed construed to provide additional free speech rights to city employees.
Which again actually compounds what I'm saying.
Right, I know.
If you don't say what the rights are, saying additional rights,
But you kept in under the First Amendment, so if we go with that, then I think it makes sense taken together.
I'm sorry, if we keep what?
under the First Amendment.
I'm sorry, it says under the First Amendment.
Right. I was proposing to delete that. You said, no, let's keep that. So if after beyond those recognized by courts, so I think we agreed to delete now or in the future.
Correct.
Right. But leave in under the First Amendment.
Correct.
Right. So if we added the three words that I suggested, so it would read, shall be construed to provide additional free speech rights to city employees beyond those recognized by courts under the First Amendment.
I guess my problem is we are backing into the whole conversation. So we're not, it's additional to what? So if you don't say what the thing is and you start with additional, it doesn't set up these are your rights and then these are additional rights, or there are no additional rights beyond this.
It's not the only way, but I think a way to read that then is that courts have recognized under the First Amendment that city employees have free speech rights, whatever those are.
They also have other rights under the First Amendment.
True. But as relates to this section, that nothing here is intended to provide additional rights, free speech or otherwise, under the First Amendment or otherwise to city employees. It's just stating that city employees shall not be discouraged from blah, blah.
What I'm saying is if you don't say what the rights are first, so I would like to think about this section because I feel like we're right now by taking out the recognition of First Amendment rights, we're backing into the conversation.
Okay. How about this? The only thing I can think of that you could do is to start off that section by saying, in adopting this subdivision, the Board of Supervisors intends merely to restate and affirm court decisions recognizing the First Amendment rights enjoyed by public employees. And that would be.
So you're saying put it back in, yeah.
As the first sentence.
So you're right. And so remember, Pil-Pal wanted to cut that sentence. You're saying we should keep the sentence.
If you're saying that we're backing into it.
Yeah.
It's like, how did we get to?
So here's the thing. If you don't want to give the Board of Supervisors credit for it, can we just say the city of, San Francisco affirms court decisions recognizing the First Amendment rights enjoyed by public employees?
Yes.
One could. I think for both, when we get to it, for both D and E, I think those will require comments from DHR, from the city's labor negotiators, from the city attorney on employer-employee relations as relates to MMBA and the ERO and whatever else. That there's a body of law that we are sort of referencing here that I'm not so familiar with, but there's an area here, and I'm trying to carefully and concisely say that yes, employees have rights. I'm not trying to either enhance or diminish those. I'm trying to be very clear that providing accurate public information should not get you into trouble, period. And whatever rights that you had are neither enhanced nor diminished by this provision that says that you shall provide accurate public information if someone asks for it. That's all, no more, no less. So if there's some magic language that an attorney or DHR or labor person says we should have that, and this is close but doesn't quite get there, I'm happy to hear that. But I didn't want to create some kind of, SEIU gets alternate Tuesdays from 1 to 3 o'clock to complain about everything the city's doing wrong, nor to say that, SEIU can never complain about anything the city's doing.
Okay, how about this? You actually said something, instead of provide, what if we say, the city affirms court decisions recognizing the First Amendment rights enjoyed by public employees. Nothing in this section shall be construed to enhance or diminish rights enjoyed by city employees beyond those recognized by courts under the First Amendment, or to create any new private cause of action or defense to disciplinary action.
Okay, except if you want to say that, then I really would insist on subsection, because I believe that subsection E, not subsection D, but I think that that actually does create a new right.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Subsection. Okay. The city affirms court decisions recognizing the First Amendment rights enjoyed by public employees. Nothing in this subsection shall be construed to enhance or diminish rights enjoyed by city employees beyond those recognized by courts under the First Amendment, or to create any new private cause of action or defense to disciplinary action.
Yeah, I think that
And I'm going to
Okay.
highlight this and say, run this by
labor attorney or something.
and our DCAs. Okay.
Yeah. Again, I'm happy for that to be wordsmith, but I think the concept in D&E plus the important concepts in A, B, and C are still there, and we're still with that.
Okay. Member Anderson, were there any other things, or were you happy with the rest of the language
Okay,
changes?
happy with the rest of it.
Okay. We are now at 7:30.
Can I say two other things before we leave this for tonight, if that's what we're going to do?
Are we going to leave this for tonight after we hear two more things?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Member
Um,
Powell.
I definitely don't want to get into 24 because that's a long discussion about a lot of different things. 23, I think I said in a previous discussion that I suggested moving that to Article 2. I think that that's, and I might word it a little differently, but I had it moved to what I had as a new section 67.17-1. All of the sections might get renumbered, but in any event is to move it to Article 2. It seems to me that 67.23, public review file, policy body communications, was about communications to a policy body. To the extent that it's policy body stuff, seems to me like it's related to meetings and policy bodies. Yes, they're documents, it's access to documents, et cetera, but it's only because you've got a policy body implicated.
Sorry, I was writing the part about which section to move it to. You want to move it there so all the policy body stuff is together.
Yeah.
Okay. I've made note of that.
I mean, there are a number of things tonight and at other times where I've said structurally, I just think it makes more sense to be elsewhere. It's not that I'm trying to, toughen or weaken the language. I'm just trying to move things to where it sort of flows more logically.
Makes sense.
Okay. So that's 23. The other concept that I wanted to float, what we just read in 67.22 about department heads designating a person knowledgeable and a backup person and what's the role, et cetera. There's something brief and sort of nice about how that lays out the functions and who's supposed to do what. If we had something parallel to that in 67.21 or elsewhere, that and maybe we talked about this at a previous meeting, that each department head should designate someone to handle records requests and a backup person, maybe multiple people, et cetera, whatever, that this concept of it's up to a department head to organize for their department a structure. This is about oral public
Okay,
information.
this gets
cetera.
back to our sort of
Meta discussion.
about, and we have a note here
Yeah, I know.
about, and should we, right, and we're thinking of applying this department level custodian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the only other thing I wanted to say about that is I think this idea of empowering a smaller number of people to be very well versed and very well trained and appropriately resourced for this function is a lot better than assuming or hoping or investing in 30,000 employees and hoping that somehow if you hand somebody a piece of paper that they're going to figure out what to do with it. That just seems like a total recipe for failure, which leads to some of the stuff that we deal with here. And so I would really like to centralize in fewer people that really ought to know, have a need to know, have the resources, have people around them, should be trained, et cetera, and then expect that they will have a phone, have an email, check it regularly, put stuff on the website, blah, 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 that they're the right people to deal with, not the bus drivers, not the nurses, not the sheriff's deputies, not the police officer. You know, they should know generally that the ordinance exists and say, if you've got a records request, I can tell you who's the point person in my department that can handle it, but I don't know the specifics about that. They handle that. Anyway, I'm just floating that concept because that's largely how I understand CPRA is structured. And I think this, and I know Member Wolf will strongly disagree, or he may strongly disagree. I think this sort of democratization of everybody who's a city employee has access to records and therefore is a custodian and everybody blah, 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 blah.
It's funny, just from today, I sort of have mixed feelings about that. Because when we've talked about it, or, you know, in other meetings, I've thought, oh yeah, that makes sense to have a centralized person, but that person could also become an enormous bottleneck. And I think if we're looking at requests that can be satisfied in under 15 minutes or, you know, are easy, I would like those to be handled by individual city employees. Because if those all get pushed to one person or one department, you're going to end up with these circular things where somebody's saying, go talk to that person, and they come back to the original person who got the request to satisfy it. And that becomes incredibly inefficient. So I think things that can be satisfied routinely and quickly in, you know, under 15 minutes should be handled at the point at which the request was received.
I have no problem with applying a B and C concept to records requests as well. I think that makes sense. All I'm saying is if you have a general request that I want the, what do you call it? Your annual report from 3 years ago, or notices of violations for a specific address, or your, you know, budget proposal for next week, whatever, and you don't know who to send it to, you should be able to send it to, you know, department xyz.sunshine@sf.gov, and somebody should check that and get back to you. You shouldn't have to figure out who the person is. If you know the person, sure, go to that person. They should be able to help you. But if you don't know who, you should be able to send it to the department head or their designated Sunshine or records person, and they should take it from there. You should not be able to just hand a note to the bus driver. That's my point. And we can continue to discuss it. I don't think there's any right answer to it. I think there are a variety of different ways to slice and dice it.
Member Anderson, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I hear what you're saying, and I agree. On a website, you should have for each department their custodian of records. Contact this person. Now, within your department, you can have different people who can respond to things, but you go through that custodian of records in order to find out who those people are. And if the custodian can't answer the question immediately, he or she can pass it along. But I've been on one of those circular trains, being in the city where you wind up where you started off. And it's like, I haven't gotten an answer yet because I keep getting shunted around and like, gee, I spoke to you half an hour ago. And now I'm asking you the same question and you're telling me to speak to somebody else, which is very frustrating. So there should be somebody who's, the buck's got to stop someplace.
Right.
And it's like the buck stops at this person, starts with this person, and then that person can help you get to where you need to go. A conductor.
Yeah. I mean, I do not think, or Member Wolf or others, I do not think it is fair to ask or expect the mayor to know everything that's going on in the city at all times, period. That is unreasonable. But I do think that as the city is organized in departments, that the head of each department, who's a city officer, should have enough staff, enough resources to get your request to the right person, or should have somebody who's designated to make that happen, you know? And it doesn't matter if it's an 8,000 person department or a 5-person department. For me, that's one of the fundamental jobs of a department head, is to resource and provide the programs and services to the city. And that includes public information, public records, period. Doesn't matter if you're the fire department or MT, doesn't matter. It falls on the department head. That's how I see it. Others too, but it starts with, you know.
On that note, one final request, if just because it came up today, and I don't know that it's come up previously, but do you mind if I do a quick search through here? You know what? I think we're good. I think I'm going to save this. I'm going to send it to Ms. Peterson for distribution to the other committee members. And then this would be the document that would be included, that would replace the one like it in the next agenda.
Noted.
Okay.
So we're not meeting in December. Our next regular meeting is February.
Do we get an extra meeting at some point?
We have not scheduled
Okay.
a replacement meeting.
Can we, how about this? Is there any public comment on this item? Let's finish things up properly.
There's no one in the room and no one online.
Okay. Please call the next item. Item number 6.
Item number 6, announcements, comments, questions, and future agenda items by members of the Compliance and Amendments Committee.
Okay. I'm going to call this questions. And I know we've discussed this at previous meetings. Because we're not having the December meeting, Ms. Peterson, do you know when we might know of possible openings in January, because other city agencies, like having rooms available where we could have a substitute meeting, since this committee won't meet in December? Is it possible for this committee to meet in January?
I will check with the office that schedules meetings and find out if there are any alternative dates.
That would be
available.
great. That would be great. Yeah, because I feel, I feel like we're making progress. It is helpful when we're all here. And I know it's hard to go hours and hours on this, just because it's, you need a fresh mind for it. So I think having an opportunity to meet in January before we meet again in February, I think would be useful.
All right.
Thank you. Member Pilpel.
Yeah, a couple of points in that regard. If it's your intent to start with 23 and 24 next time, I think if we can note that on the agenda, that would be
We can do that.
I'm not sure that we need to do this now or immediately, but perhaps if you could start to think about an email or a memo to city departments saying that, we have a draft, we worked on it, there are things that we have some consensus on, there are things that we're still working through. Here are some specific areas or points that we would really like to get specific department input on, that's not going to determine, but, where they have expertise, whether it's technology, HR, et cetera, we would like them to weigh in sooner than later. We certainly welcome whatever input at any time and anywhere, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But, these specific areas, which we've started to talk about.
Right. Yeah, I think that'd be useful.
And at some point, not necessarily the next time, I think we should talk about the structure and some of those meta issues.
Mhm.
I mean, we will.
Member Anderson?
The only thing I would add to what Member Pilpel said is that when we go, if we go, to different departments that we should go with specific questions, not a, please take a look at this and let me know what you would
Right.
change.
Yeah, no, I agree.
It's-
Yeah,
It's, I need to know, can you do this, 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 and this?
right.
So I would say would be as specific as possible. I
Okay.
have trouble with that word.
Let me make one quick note to myself. Okay.
I mean, I think they are aware or should be aware of state law and what that generally provides. I think what we're asking or should be asking is what are the more practical implications in San Francisco if we limit or do things differently or faster or structure it in certain ways. And they may say, yeah, we could do it like that. It's going to cost $1 million, but we could do that. Or if they say, we would prefer blah, 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 but we understand why you might, I mean, it's more color and flavor than anything. It's not like we're saying you can never use technology or you should, never keep records or you should keep everything forever, period, regardless. I don't think we're suggesting anything extreme one way or the other. It's what are the practical implications of doing this as it relates to your particular work, HSA, port, MTA, Rec Park, et cetera. And I'll say, well, if we have to keep pesticide reports for 20 years rather than only 5, it's just more reports. But I guess we could do that. And if we're saying,
I think they should save everything for all time.
well, okay, fine. So let them say, if we do that, that means more buildings and more digitizing and da-da-da. And if that's a trade-off the city wants to make, then fine. I mean, these are good arguments to be made, right?
On that note, because and I'm not sure how because you were saying when we seek input. Yes, good recommendation. Anything else? Any questions about future or suggestions for future agenda items for this committee?
For me, not at this time.
Okay.
If you want to call a special with a quorum being available prior to February, please do.
Yeah, that's.
So-
I think Ms. Peterson is going to look on room availability because that is our limiting. Well, that and our ability to attend are the 2 limiting factors.
Yes.
Yes, and not not overburdening staff, but we're not having one in December, so it's sort of shuffling things around.
Right. Yeah, I'm of the view that if we're not having more total meetings than what we proposed, then we're fine. If we're proposing to meet, 3 times a week, that's different.
Right. I mean, and I think the one advantage too is, I think when we had looked before, does January have a 5th? Depending on how the calendar goes, let me look at this.
5th Tuesday.
Yeah, there might be a 5th. Is there a 5th Tuesday in January? No. There are 5 Wednesdays in January.
Well, that's an option,
Yeah.
although it would be back-to-back Wednesdays,
Oh, but we're already doing the SOT, the full task force
maybe.
on the Wednesday. I think you had surveyed us about that. Or yes,
Isn't it
the
a,
21st.
look, I think it's a Tuesday and it's back to back with the complaint committee.
Yeah. I guess here, my question would be if there's a chance that this room is available on Wednesday, the 29th. Oh, I can't do that day. Never mind.
Or Wednesday, the 22nd. Whatever. The point is, feel free to look around if you find something.
Okay. Thank you. Let's call the last item.
Public comment?
Oh, public comment. Do we have any public?
There is no one online and no one in the room.
Okay. Next item, please.
Item 7, adjournment.
All in favor?
Without objection.
Okay, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. I appreciate you being here, and I felt like we made some good progress.
Adjourned at 7:46, turning off the recording.
And turning off the microphones.